You're listening to What She Said on Canada Talks.
Hello there, I'm Christine Bentley in studio with Kate Wheeler, and joining us now is an award-winning Canadian-Italian filmmaker. We're going to say his full name here. Pasquale Marco Veltri.
Ooh, that was sexy.
That's amazing.
Amazing.
I don't know if I can say it that well.
Well, I'm going to Italian heaven when I die, so I'm practicing now. Welcome to What She Said.
Thank you,
Marco. So, your film, Words to Remember, won Best Narrative Award at the Columbus International Film Festival. So tell us about this film.
Well, this film was something I worked on for a few years. As a filmmaker, you sort of work on something for 3 to 4 years. You go into your hole, you hide, then you come out and show it to people. This film is really about regret. It's about looking back at your life and thinking, what would I regret into my 80s and 90s or 70s, wherever I may end up getting, and sort of looking back at what changes I can make now to later on in life not have those regrets. So it's sort of focusing your life on what's important, and in the end it's really just a series of wisdom handed down from older actors, saying lines that you might remember.
Now, did you take sort of a tally of what your regrets were? What were they?
Well, for me, because for me it's very simple. Like, every decision I make is based on making the next film. So as a filmmaker and an artist, you're kind of driven in one direction. But at the same time, because of that drive, sometimes you lose track of your family and friends, and you kind of lose the ability to connect to others because you're always working on your next project. So for me, it was kind of taking stock of what's really important. And in the end, you can make 100 movies, but then be by yourself. So for me, it was really changing my path slightly to make sure that I made time for the people that I care about.
And have you?
I think that I have. So I can see.
Maybe we should be talking to them.
Well, yeah. Well, hopefully they're listening and call in. But
So is this basically work-life balance that you found that you didn't have?
That's basically, for me, if in a nutshell, that's what the film for me was about, was finding a way to tell a story that would, it's really Words to Remember is for me to understand what's important. A lot of my films are kind of a self-examination of what I need to do to fix what's going on with me. So a lot of the times my films are therapy for myself and kind of making myself move forward past the problem, and then I move on to the next one. So it's sort of a never-ending journey.
Well, the fact that it won Best Narrative Award must mean that somebody got the message from your story.
Yeah, hopefully. Anyway, it's one of those things where you send something out there, and Words to Remember has been on the festival circuit for a year and a half without even that many acceptances, really. And you really have to sort of hit the right film festival that gets what you're talking about and is looking for the themes that your film is about. And there's so many films being made that to get recognized at any film festival is just, I don't have the words to express how important it is.
But your passion is really to understand the human condition, and I would imagine there would be quite an audience for that.
Well, there is a huge audience for it, but I don't think they're allowed to see it. Because of the way distribution model is set up, you're allowed to see all the action movies and the superhero movies, but small little films with, very, it's difficult to express the fact that an emotional film with a story is niche now, where in the 70s it wasn't. That was mainstream. Mm-hmm. But now, everything has to be a tentpole for a studio, that a giant billion-dollar film to get noticed. But luckily, what's happened is the market is kind of cracking. What happened to music 10 years ago is now happening to film. And with video on demand, Netflix, and all these online platforms, we're now sort of in like a renaissance for independent filmmakers, where you now have a voice. You can, at the very least, reach an audience, which was impossible before.
Now, you've made some smaller films, shorter shorts that I've seen as Measuring Tape Girl. So this is like an expansion of that. Tell us a little bit about that, because that you can absolutely watch online. It's still got a Facebook page up, I think.
Yeah, that's funny. You're always setting up little internet places for people to go to find the films, and I'm still getting emails about that film. And that was an even more personal film, where it was about me getting over myself and being able to, get over the self-image and self-doubt images that I would have, where I wouldn't believe that I was good enough, and I wouldn't believe that I deserved things, and it struck a chord with a lot of people. And in the end, I had to call it Measuring Tape Girl, because Measuring Tape Marco wouldn't have the same appeal, and I don't think people were ready to hear a man saying these things. But it is a universal theme, self-doubt and self-image issues. And I think one of the problems I see is that we divide things up. If we think of things as human issues, I think they would get solved. But we have a tendency to micro everything into its little tagline. And then people think, well, that's not my problem. It only affects these people, not me. So a lot of the times I think I'm working on a very personal issue, but in the end it sometimes ends up being universal.
So how did you get into this? You went through high school and you thought, I'm going to make films about things that I care about, or how? Usually it's never a straight path.
It's not a straight path. Like as a child, I like every kid, I wanted to go to space. I was watching Star Wars and those kinds of movies, and eventually I discovered that there's people that made movies, and all of a sudden making a movie and playing with cameras became cooler to me than going to space. And I think I must have been 7 or 8, and since then it's sort of all I thought about was making films. I may not have always thought of making small personal films, but in the end, for me, that was the only way to keep going, because of how much time it takes and how hard it is. And really, as a Canadian filmmaker, really you're always fighting reality to keep going, because you're always struggling against money, attention, distribution. So really, you have to be making something that's important for you, to keep going. If you don't care about what you're doing, how can you struggle through it? And if it's just about the money, then you're not going to be making films in Canada, I don't think.
Well, let's talk about the money a little bit, because you talked about how hard it is to find distribution and how to get things out. How hard is it to find funding? Because we hear a lot about lots of government organizations, film board, that kind of thing. But you actually crowdfunded a portion of it as well.
Yeah, there was, at the end, we crowdfunded, which actually turns out to be part of the most expensive part of even of smaller films, is getting it to film festivals. Each film festival can be a few $100s to get it there, plus the files you need to send there. It's much easier now because you're not always mailing DVDs, but just sending things to film festivals can be thousands of dollars, over 10 really. And so for a small independent filmmaker, I think a lot of people forget, at the end of the movie, once you've spent all the money and you're bankrupt and you have nothing left except the finished film, you need more money than you did to start with, because now you have to send the film to film festivals, you have to engage PR people, you have to try to get interviews, you have to get into film festivals, and when you do, and no one tells you this, you have to pay for yourself to get there. There are grants, but those come later and you don't always get them.
Is it harder in Canada than other countries? Or is it kind of, for small independent filmmakers, the same anywhere?
Well, I don't have any other experience, but I think it's harder and easier in Canada, because we live in such a great country where you can sit around and dream about what you want to do. I think that's why there's so many filmmakers here, because you're allowed to be an artist. As much as you struggle with, bankruptcy, and you struggle with, the will to keep going, you can find a way, where in other countries you might not be able to. But at the same time, I don't know if we're allowed to have screens in Canada. So
What do you mean?
Well, actual distribution towards a theater, and that model's going away anyway. But if you make a feature film in Canada and it doesn't have major stars, you're not going to get a release. And I think that's true for worldwide. So as an independent filmmaker, and I don't think it matters what country you're in, you really have to find a way to get it to people in non-traditional methods. So I think that's the next step for most filmmakers, is finding a way to get an audience without a theater.
Well, and that would obviously be the internet, online.
Yeah, there's so many different ways, but the issue is, how do you monetize it? Because you can spend 5 years working on something and then you give it away for free, which is fine, and it is the model that we're heading to. But you have to try to find a way to break even. And that sounds silly to most business people listening, where you're just trying to break even. But a lot of the times the film you're making is a marketing tool to get you other kinds of work.
Are you in the market for other kinds of work?
Well, when I say other kinds of work, it's more of film-related work. So I do small commercials, music videos, and the odd corporate video here and there. It's sort of, whenever anyone asks me, do I do this? As a Canadian artist, you say yes, and you learn how to do it. And I've done that for years. So it's sort of whatever I need to do to keep going. So there's usually a period of time where I make the movie, and then a period of time I recover from making the movie. So it depends on the time of the cycle. So I think I'm now heading towards pre-production and trying to shoot something next year. So I'm in the process of slowly bankruptcying myself, going back to bankruptcy, and then I try to crawl out. So it's a silly cycle to be in, but it's one that's sort of been working. And if I was a small business, it would make sense, because you take a couple of losses and then you get your money back and maybe make a profit, and then it's a couple of years, it goes in a cycle and you just keep going. But I'm not a business, I'm a person, so some people look at me and think I'm crazy. So
Well, now you filmed this. You live in Toronto, and you filmed this all over the Greater Toronto area, but just places you could get to by car.
Essentially, yeah, yeah. All the locations are in the GTA, and there's been other shoots where we've traveled further out. But when you're making a very low budget film, you sort of have to look around the cities that you know in a different way and find those little corners that people look at shots from the film. They don't realize that's Brampton or North Toronto or Scarborough. They just that looks nice and it looks like a metaphor for the film. So it's more finding little locations that kind of meet the needs of the story, and just the general area has so many spots, and it really comes down to looking around and being there at the right time of day, because at 3 o'clock it looks like a postcard and looks perfect, but then by 4:30 it doesn't look like anything anymore.
Well, but you have said that you wanted this film to have a dreamlike quality because it's a visual poem.
Yeah, so it's a mix of how you shoot it as well. So any kind of wide-angle camera work, flowing cameras, and a little bit of slow-mo, and just the way the music is played and the way things are cut together kind of can give that sense of a dream. And I think I'm sort of I always lean towards that with every film that I'm making accidentally. In a lot of my films, I try to make myself not make it look visually interesting because I kind of lean towards eye candy. And I have a tendency to make things look too pretty, so I have to sort of lean away from that. In fact, with Measuring Tape Girl, I made sure I couldn't move the camera. I had just an actor talking for 14 minutes. So I put these challenges in front of myself so I don't keep making the same postcardy film.
You're watching What She Said on YouTube.
Tell us about the music.
The music itself, for Words to Remember, had sort of a cultural background. We had 4 different languages, English, French, and 2 Indian dialects, and we picked an instrument called the taus, which is an Indian instrument that's really even ancient for Indian music, and it gave it a very unique sound, so it would weave in and out of sort of a North American sound and then bleed into the taus playing, and it's sort of like a weird violin. So it's sort of an extended, it's kind of like just a little different kind of an echo. So I'm not a music expert, but you know when you hear that come in, it sounds otherworldly, like a different world or a different culture is coming in. So we wanted to make sure that the music supported the film and kind of push the idea in of the universal themes that we were talking about.
So now, you talked about, I mean, I have no idea what you mean when you say a low-budget film. I mean, give us a range for that.
Well, there's, feature films in Canada there's sort of 2 ranges. There's the $10 million films, which I'm not making. And then there's the feature films that are, I guess, $500,000 or under. But when it comes to shorts, you're looking at anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000. And that's a general average, but I've been making most of what I've been making around $10,000 to $20,000, and the next project is probably going to have to be closer to 200,000, but we're going to have to try to do it with 60, I think.
Okay, so then you need the money to make the film. Then how much? I mean, your films have screened in Canada, the UK, France, Italy, Egypt, the Cannes Film Festival, as well as the Montreal World Film Festival. So how much? Because you gave us an idea. It can be hundreds to thousands to get there. So to be on the show circuit, and you are for what, another few months at least?
Yeah.
So how much would that add on to it?
Well, you're looking a lot of the times, especially with Measuring Tape Girl, because it was such a small movie, the cost of traveling, going to film festivals, and marketing the film out are greater than the film. So Measuring Tape Girl might have been around 10,000, but just going to the Cannes Film Festival was around 15. Not including Montreal and the other film festivals. So in the end, you have to do what you have to do to get the film out there. So a lot of films I say I'm breaking even, but it's almost not breaking even. So it depends on the film itself. But with the types of films that we're making, not only are you not allowed to screen, you're not allowed a platform that monetizes it. So in the end, you're sort of accepting the fact that it's a loss leader for your next film.
And what is your next film?
The next film we're making is actually about a sex worker who is trying to retire and failing. And it's really, again, possibly about identity, but we're still in the middle of finishing the writing. But it's mainly about taking control of your own life and finding a way to move forward.
So when you say we, who do you work with?
Well, I think in a lot of ways when I say we, I'm using the royal we because it is such a small production
So
staff.
is it Pasquale and Marco?
Yeah, sometimes we have meetings, but luckily now I am working with some producers who are helping out, and that has changed a lot because every film up to now it's been me, and now the funny thing is we're working on a script and we're on like version 11, and other scripts, every other film I made is like version 1A.
Well, you must have learned. You must have learned a lot, and I'm hoping that winning an award like Best Narrative Award out of Columbus International Film Festival will mean that when you go to people and talk to them, they have something to go on that helps boost your profile.
What it does is your emails get answered. That's the difference. It doesn't necessarily open all the doors, but I don't think you need the door to be open. You just need people to see you, and with the way the industry works, everyone is very supportive and they want you to do something, but no one's really going to get out there and just give you money. You have to make a film before they help you make a film. So I think until I make a feature by myself, then someone will help you. And I think that's a general rule for a lot of things in life, especially in any type of art and in filmmaking. When you make that first feature, then people come out of the woodwork to help you.
Where can we see Words to Remember?
Words to Remember at this time is still in the festival circuit, so we're going to be looking for some video on demand, so it should be available somewhere in about 3 months. But the trailer is online, and so a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff. And if you just Google Words to Remember, you'll be able to find it on Google or YouTube, and you'll see links towards it, and you'll be able to keep track of what festivals we're going to.
Thank you very much, Pasquale Marco Veltri. I don't say it as well as Christine, but that's it.
Click the channel subscribe button for full-length interviews and more from What She Said here on YouTube.